and they aren't going to let the real thing happen. It has to be manufactured and shepherded in the direction that they've had a plan for decades.
Oh, if not centuries, or even millennia, depending on where you want to go with the level of control on the planet.
Hemp Lucid has been a leader in the hemp industry space for nearly 5 years. And Hemp Lucid has been a supporter of the Sun community for over 8 years now. Grand Solar Minimum. Hemp Lucid credits part of their awakening and a motivation for starting their company, the cycles of reset through history based on solar activity. I've gotten to know the founders of Hemp Lucid over the years. They even visited me out here on my farm. I'm impressed with the vision for the company. They have a roadmap and a definite plan moving forward. And as we descend deeper into this Grand Solar Minimum, it's going to be vital for people to start taking holistic products that will help support a healthy body and mind through this transition. Hemp Lucid sells USDA organic products available in tinctures, topicals, edibles, capsules. They also offer pet products for your furry friends. And Hemp Lucid is offering the Adapt 2030 community up to 60% off products for Black Friday, starting November 14th through the 30th. So visit hemplucid.com. And if you're not sure where to start, try their product finder quiz for helpful recommendations based on your needs and the amount that works for you. hemplucid.com.
Hello, and welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. Tonight we have special guest David DuByne from Adapt 2030. He discusses energetic changes on Earth as the sun repeats its 400-year cycle of low activity, affecting global crop production and the economy and everyone on our planet, with a timeline for what you can expect from now to 2023 as society resets. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing, brother?
Yeah, thanks for the kind intro. And I think it's more of a once in a 2,000 year cycle this time, not a 400, which would mean a heavier, more powerful cycle. Everybody can feel the vibrations changing. And I don't mean that in a woo-woo fashion. Just things seem to be speeding up faster. And I think we all feel it. We all see something across the news waves that it is being tweaked a little bit from your old life that you used to know. Ask yourself why, and you say, well, these cycles are back here right now again. So somebody's front running the cycle, trying to gain control. So the world doesn't go insane as we move through these next few years. And you're right, 2023 and 24 are going to be the apex of wave number one. The most transition and change will occur between now and these next 3 years. But then after 2024, we'll get a real good timeline on intensities, earth changes, climate extremes, and this sort of thing moving forward on where the crops are going to grow or not, how much food will be available for versus the population of the planet, and then how much unrest that will be and how that will be controlled. Then, they'll do it the same thing, 2.0, 2028 wave. So thanks for having me on. There's a lot to talk about, and especially the spiritual side of things. That's really a solution that we need to think about versus, trying to live in a basement for 30 years with canned food. That's not going to do it. You're going to have to get out there with your communities and whatnot.
Yeah, I've been watching your work for a really long time, and I really couldn't think of a better person to talk about all the things that you discuss, earth changes, the grand solar minimum, food and crop production and shortages, economic stability, and of course the energy grid, because we know that that's in a constant state of flux. So, and you're the expert in this field, so let's kind of just jump right into this. And since it's your first time on the show, maybe give a little background on how you got into researching these cycles, and did something happen, like an event that maybe got you interested in going down this rabbit hole of research?
Totally by accident, totally random, totally unexpected. But it changed my life to devote all my time and energy to try to put the message out that we got a huge problem. It's occurring now. But when I started my channel and talking about this, 2014, 15, I used to buy coffee in Myanmar. place called Burma. And we were inter-Asia trading. So we'd buy coffee down in Myanmar, export out of Yangon port, and then we would send to different parts in different countries in Asia, Japan, Taiwan. And buying coffee after, a good 5th, 6th trip into there, they invited us to stay up at their coffee farm, and, you start to get more invited around once they know you're a real buyer. You're actually going to spend money and, commit to new plantings out in their coffee farms that they can count on that production from that acre is going to you. So when you start to put that investment in, then they take you seriously. So when we started talking about new acreage going out, they said, yeah, we're overplanting right now about 14% because the extreme cold's killing off part of the plants in the 1 to 2 year sapling stage once they're out in the field. And the bean density is less because the water freezes into microsphereal, leaves these pockets in there. So the density is not as tight and as it used to be. So roasting profiles are going to be a bit different. And then at the same time, the top leaf kill on the plants. So I was 100% global warming. That's all I ever knew. Saw the Al Gore movie back in the day, was jaw dropping, like, whoa, when he got on that thing, and oh, the CO2 is going up here. Ice is going to melt. All by 2009. Remember, there was going to be no ice by 2009. Oh, wait, 2013. Sorry, my bad. Oh, I mean, 2018. Sorry, 2050 sometime now. Anyway, I was so into the global warming. So when I went down there, it didn't make sense to me because, Burma, for those of you, Myanmar, it's right near the equator. And even though you're up at 1,000, 1,200 feet for the Arabica beans, I just started looking around as a business guy, looking out about 5 years to see if we'd have enough supply to continue to expand a business. Because the only way you're going to expand a coffee business is getting more supply. So if you could put the money down as investment in the field production itself, plantings, or you could just buy production. That's the way we're, okay, is it going to keep expanding down there for years and years so we can grow the business? Then they started talking about the cold damage, and this made, so then I just started looking back. All right, well, cold damage didn't make sense to me. I started to look back in the past because they told me their grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers in the 1880s or so talked about extreme cold doing the same thing. And that's when the British were over there and just starting to put coffee in as a cash crop. So I started looking back in these cycles, just as a guy going, okay. And then I ran into John Casey's work. And then once I saw John Casey's presentations, former NASA space shuttle, lead investigator, no less, lead investigator for when the shuttle went down and it made the world news. And when that thing, when you saw the fuselages blasting off everywhere, he was the lead investigator for that, for NASA, coming out. And as soon as he started to come out with these cycles of the sun, and giving a timeline to when the next low cycle was coming and the damage it would have on society, 30-year distinguished career at NASA ruined. So this is a guy, I was like, he's telling the truth. They wouldn't ruin him like that if he hadn't put the information out. And that was the very first trickle into it, because learning about these cycles is one thing, having a little similar timeline of when they're occurring. But then where it really slaps you in the face is when you go back through history and you start to see dynasties, emperors, fiefdoms, kingdoms, kings and queens all collapsing on this same cycle, 400 year. And then you start really go, oh, wow, that's going to be a huge problem. Wonder what food production is going to be like moving forward. And then I started to, start the Adapt 2030 channel and put those signs together. This is 2014, 15. So I was looking for the outliers of these extremes at the time, extreme snowstorms, record-breaking temperatures that were breaking the records from the 1880s. And that's what I initially started on. And those, you'd have to look through the news and you get a good 5 or 6 per week. And I was doing videos explaining these things about more cycles, but then you get the news stories added in on top of the cyclic information. But then come around now, for example, there's thousands, there's so many, there's no way one person can continue to report that much of what I would trickle in 2014, 15 about these changes on the extremes that we're seeing. It's so overwhelming and such a tidal wave. Then you try to add the information in about the economy, because the 3 things that happen every grand solar minimum are these, I termed it the fingerprints of the grand solar minimum. The population migration, which people need to leave to go to better quality of life, whether they're a place where they were growing food in the 1600s or just a place where you could have a job or you wouldn't freeze or you had food accessibility. And then the economy would collapse globally because value of work or whatever was of value at that time that mechanism that tagged it to value as an asset class or whatever it was, labor that was valued at a certain amount, or crops that were valued at a certain amount through hundreds of years for the amount of silver pegged to that, thrown out of the window because now everything was rising 3, 4, 5x in price. Labor force was reduced, population was reduced about 25% in the 1640 to 1690 era. Global population collapsed that much. So just like we're seeing today, there's barely enough people to hold together our economy with a thread anyway. Things are collapsing on the supply chain side. There's just not enough workers to even keep and maintain bare minimum operations at so many places. And I'm just looking at it really and saying, wow, that is exactly like it's been every collapse cycle that I looked back through. The next thing we're going to look for is change in government as people become angry and hungry on the streets and want change. But, you see all these mechanisms today to prevent that. So when I look back, I'm thinking, they have better technology and they're stepping in front of the cycle preemptively to stop the same things happen that have happened for the last 7 or 8 of these events that I've studied all the way back to, about 2000 BC, pretty good research back to say 500 BC with a Homeric minimum. And, what I find too, might map up with this, further you go back in history, the foggier it gets, which you think would be the inverse. Because if it was such a historical event and it was the center of the world at that time, there'd be an enormous amount of records, but there aren't. So what happened? I'm still trying to figure it out. Is it hidden? Did it just collapse so deeply that things were lost? Because, the things were meant to last back then, a lot of stone carvings, a lot of things carved on materials and medium that we don't use today that would withstand the test of time. I don't know. There's missing chapters of history that don't make sense. And the explorations of a lot of nations were based on these same cycles. I don't know if they were looking for better food grow areas, different economy. I don't know, but you start to see the same things again. And I tell you, absolutely, we're in the center of it right now. It's at the crossover point where it can't be hidden anymore. And this is the rollover year, 2022. The food's going to get super expensive. I mean, you haven't seen anything yet in food price rises. Wait till it doubles again. It's not available. That'll be the first thing. And it'll be unavailable first before the food price gets to the point where you'll go to the street. We'll start chipping away at your availability on the store shelves. And once you start to see things disappearing, you go, okay, well, I didn't need that anyway. It was too expensive. I wasn't going to buy it. But then when your milk runs to 12 bucks a gallon by the middle of next year, people are going to start to go, whoa, now I'm starting to get a little angry here. Things are going to get really expensive. So everybody's going to witness some extreme in climate coming up. 23 and 24 are going to get outrageous with the second magnetic field building in the outer solar system, having more effect on our Earth's atmosphere. So it's at the point right now, it can't be hidden any longer. So Ryder, I don't know, how do you think what you would do if you're a government? How would you hide this information with the people now that you know that this year is the very last year that you can't hide it because it's going to be visible in front of everybody's eyes? So how would you mask it or control the populace once they know it's here?
I would create a distraction and then I would shift responsibility because we know that they're never going to take responsibility, David. That's their number one in their playbook. They have to create some other kind of manufactured event and blame it on that instead of it actually being blamed on them because they're never going to take responsibility. And we know that massive food shortages are coming. I mean, that's an inevitability. You can't just shut down the world for 2 years and not expect any repercussions in the supply chain, right? Wheat production at a very low right now. Stores and supermarkets trying to hide the fact that they don't have any product. World food prices at an all-time high. It's really a setup for a huge food disaster. But I guess my question is, David, I might be skipping here a little bit, but
no, skip around.
What is this supply chain going to be replaced with? Because it has to be replaced with something, right? They have to transition this system into something new. Now, what that new system is going to be, I really have no idea, but they have to collapse all of it in order for something new to be built. And that goes for the monetary system. That goes for the food distribution system. So What's your thoughts on what they're going to replace this entire system with? Because I watched your show the other day with that gentleman that was talking about the new monetary system that they're going to install. And I agreed with a lot of what he was saying, but there's a few things that I didn't agree with. And one of those things being that they just can't introduce a brand new system out of nowhere, right? Because if they did that, then that would create too much opposition to it and it wouldn't get everybody on board. They have to make people suffer a little bit. And that requires us waking up one day when it comes to the monetary system and our money being completely worthless, right? We're still going to have all of our money, but we're not going to be able to buy anything with it. And they're going to stretch that out for a while, right? And then they'll introduce the new system when everybody is on their knees and begging for it, right? That's the way that they have to do it. And that's the way that they've done it. They have to make us think that it's our idea. And if they don't, then that creates too much opposition and resistance to a new system. So they have to collapse it, make us struggle for a bit, and then out of the chaos, they birth a new system. So what's your thoughts on that?
Homodor starving the planet on purpose here for the supply chain as we go through. And, you know, you mentioned this different, and I've been I'm trying to get together a new graphic right now because the new monetary system is going to be built on several parts. First one's going to be a non-usage tax. So right now in England, what they're proposing is if you buy an electric car, you're going to have to pay a road tax because you're not going to buy fuel, which is road tax is included in the fuel taxes. So since you're not buying fuel anymore, you're not going to be adding anything in monetarily into the roads. So that'll go with water. So if you drill your own well and you get off the system, you'll have to pay a non-usage fee. Also, those who are getting ready, solar, wind, whatever it is on your property, anybody who's going to get more self-autonomous is going to have to pay a non-usage tax. And that'll be through the transition of everything. Now, I'm not sure if this will, stay the same 20 or 30 years from now, but during the transition, it will. Another part, there's 5 parts of this, the transition to the new economy. Now, this has not come off of Peter's interview. I've been working on this for over a year now to figure out where this new transition, because you're right, they have to have something to replace it. Now, the best way I've been told so far is they're just going to lock the system for a month or two and then just restart an entirely new system. So there'll be no opposition, like you say. People will be begging to get any monetary thing back. The cards won't work. ATMs won't work. No online banking. Nothing will work except your physical gold and silver in your hand. And then they'll just turn the system back on, revalued, and they'll probably revalue your money either 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. You'll still have new money, but it'll be a fraction. And then this whole Gesara thing, which is built onto this whole new monetary system. See, Gesara, it sounds great and everything. Like they're going to absolve all your debt. You're going to have no taxes. There'll be no income tax, but there'll be a flat rate 17% consumption tax or 15%. Well, that doesn't matter. You're still paying tax on everything you consume. And then the whole thing about you have to register for a digital ID, global digital ID, by using your social security number and your driver's license to get into a new digital ID system. They're putting you right in the hands of the global ID at that point. I mean, serious global ID to be able to access the money in this new utopian system. And then, they're talking about the quantum financial system and everything's going to be blockchain based. And they're going to be rocking with the crypto, with the central bank digital currencies, which again, locks you right back into the central control. The whole point of blockchain and crypto was to get out of the central control. But then the mining's being co-opted into these megaliths that are these, consolidated mining giants that control all the hash and algorithm capacity all over the crypto space. I mean, you can't mine anything on a rig in your house like you used to way back in like 2016 and 15. Impossible. Then they locked you into the new system. You got to have a global digital ID. Okay, well, what if they change the rules and say, we now need to do this to continue to have access to that ID? Oh, and by the way, money. So this whole thing about, and then the crypto keys, the reason I was talking about, yeah, it's going to all have central bank digital currency and you'll have autonomy with your money. But your private keys to the wallets where the CBDC are going to be deposited are also under centralized control. You don't own your own keys. It's in a central repository, the quantum financial system. Whoa, but it's centralized again. You have no control of your money whatsoever. If I have a dollar bill, it's mine. It's in my hand. I can control it unless the government collapses and lose value. But as long as I have that piece of paper in my hand, I control the money. Or a piece of gold or silver, it's mine. It's in my hand. I control it. But the minute you go into 100% digital space, central bank digital issuance, and then the private keys are controlled by the issuer, you got nothing. You got less than nothing because they could pull your ID. Oh, how do you prove who you are now? You can't. There's no paper documents anymore. Oh, there's no more digital. There's no more paper money. Everything's digital. So how would you buy anything? You know, it's great that they want to take away the taxes and all this new plan system, but they're going to replace it with something way more nefarious than what's been going on now. That's what the transition's about, to get you into this new system. And I digress. I have these parts here. The non-usage tax for anything that you're going to get off the system to do by yourself to make you autonomous, you're still going to have to pay for it. Don't care if all those solar panels are paid for and you got 20 kilowatts coming off your property or 100 kilowatts or 50, whatever it is, you got to pay for that now because you're not using the system. And then there'll be an eco value or they call it like an eco value tax or an eco value assessment asset class. They're going to revalue all the land and forest, and all the land across the planet will be revalued as a sum pledged against to create a new currency base. In addition to, they call it a basket, and they're so cute. They're calling it a rainbow currency. Yeah, well, it's supposed to be the gold at the end of the rainbow, but then also the different colors within the rainbow. So you got red, orange, yellow, blue, green, indigo, violet. So go around and pick the currencies that are the exact same colors. Those will also be a basket plus the gold. Okay, then with that, that's something more usable. And then we got crypto, which will be its own market. And then here's another thing that goes right along in the eco valuing of land and forests is all this carbon market. So these carbon allocation credits for you and I on the personal side. Okay, that's one thing. You know, they're going to give you like 10 credits a month for carbon to spend. And once you run out of your 10 credits, you're going to have to go purchase more to then go buy the item you want to buy. So wait a second, it's an existential threat. We can't put any more in the atmosphere yet. If somebody holds a forest over there, you can buy a carbon credit from them and they can still pollute. And then you can go buy that thing you want to buy. You just have to buy the carbon credit from the people trying to stop CO2 from going in the atmosphere that created a market out of thin air. So they can still put it up, but you have to pay for it because somebody else, I don't know, you see where that goes. But the carbon market is going to be the base of that, which rolls back into the eco value, where they're going to take seriously large chunks of the earth off usage, shall we say. And once they set apart an eco value, they're going to set that between 20 and 70 years of no human souls are allowed to use that land, not even cutting one tree, not even a single tree. But then they'll use that as a base for a currency. So you can't have people going in and whacking down 100,000 acres of what your currency was based on. So once they start, cordoning off these areas that are going to be the eco value, then you can see those are going to be done for the carbon allocation credits. So those go to like a DNA strand. And also what I really don't like either is, again, I like to use this word front running, meaning somebody knows what's going to happen before the event by months or years. These billionaires are out there. They're buying millions and millions and millions of acres of just remote forest land. But then find out, oh, if you have forest, you can put it into the carbon system now, and you can register your forest. And then each year there'll be a certain amount of dollars paid to you based on the tree species, which they'll use LIDAR to determine what the average tree species is and give you a value per acre that's paid in cash. Well, it'll probably be crypto back to your account, as long as you pledge the forest for 20 or more years. Now see and you got to realize it's going to be up to $200 an acre. Right now it's about $8. In the future, they're going to try to level it at 200 per acre per year. So who's out there? What billionaires went off and bought 5 million acres up at the edge of the ranges somewhere, private land? They probably pledged it to the state or to the country as a national park, but I still own it. They register that. And for each acre they have each year, they're getting that amount, anywhere from $8 to $200 per acre directly into their own personal bank account. So do that times 1 million acres every single year moving forward. Who just got played? So that's a whole new monetary system. It's going to be similar to what we have now, but the infrastructure is going to start to break apart during year 2023 and 24. And you should start to see some infrastructure start to shatter and make no sense in breakages and outages coming up here real heavy in 2022. March, whereas it would begin, and as we move towards September, October, and November of next year, the most crazy, outlandish, unbelievable, that can't happen types of things will be happening that will explain away breakdowns in infrastructure, non-deliveries, and more supply chain constraints and breakdowns in cutoff points. And that's the new graphic I'm working on.
100%. And I think
Got to shorten it though in the words.
Yeah, and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard, David, because we've been made to believe if we just, well, the majority of people, the majority of the population has been made to believe if they just comply and go along with all of this nonsense, then everything is going to go back to normal. And that's not the way that it's going to work. We're going to see things break down, and people are going to be asking why. And when they've been out there fanning the flames of this the entire time, right? They've been fanning the flames and talking about how, oh, we just need to do this, we need to go do that, and everything will be all fine. We just need to listen to the government and what they're saying. And then when everything is on fire, they're going to be like, well, how did it all get on fire? Like, how did this happen? Well, you were the one that made that happen, right?
No, they'll twist it into you were because you didn't believe heavily enough in the government, because you were the last one. You were the 100th monkey or the straw that broke the camel's back. It didn't work just because of you, because you didn't believe. It's all your fault. See, yep. Blame it on Ryder.
But that's the thing that they always do. They always shift the blame. It's always someone else's fault. It's always another country's fault, and they blanket it. It's another group's fault. It's another person's fault, and they spread that out and put an umbrella on all of it, and it's a constant blame game, because they're never going to take responsibility for anything that they do, because if they did, then that would wake too many people up, and then we would have real riots, we would have real chaos and real anarchy, and they aren't going to let the real thing happen. It has to be manufactured and shepherded in the direction that they've had a plan for decades.
Oh, if not centuries, or even millennia, depending on where you want to go with the level of control on the planet. We're coming into a period right now that hasn't been experienced in 2,000 years. So the reason I was talking about the infrastructure starting to break and get much more unreliable moving forward, there's a second magnetic field starting to form in the outer solar system. And it's comprised of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And they're going to be the closest physically possible in our solar system. There's no other way. This is the closest they can physically ever be together, ever. Is coming up in 2024 of October. Now they're going to form a square in the outer solar system, in one quadrant of the solar system, bunched together. And then the sun's stepping down in its activity as well. And the Earth's, trying to match that electrical discharge from what the sun's been giving us for several hundred years. The crust has a little bit of extra charge into it, so it's trying to discharge out. And we're starting to see a lot of atmospheric lightning from ground to sky, the blue jets, the red sprites, the elves, and even now some of the field, the magnetic field lines are glowing because the plasma ropes wrapping around that, called auroral ropes, are big enough and wide enough to illuminate an entire magnetic field line circumference coming into the planet. This is the kind of change that's happening. Now, as this magnetic field intensifies through 2024, the Earth's crust, top 2 miles, are going to start to, they're going to start to crack, rift, sinkholes, just things that don't make sense. Like the land will just uplift by itself with no earthquake, nothing. It'll just, like it did, where's that, Minnesota? A farm field lifted 30 feet. It was in a bean field, I believe. The farm just lifted up 30 feet. And you'll start to see all these things and these escarpments just form out of nothing. Another one you want to look for specifically, agriculture, water, aquifers is one. Something will break and like a river will drain overnight, or an entire lake, or a well system will go dry. These are the types of things that are going to happen, because most of it's going to be limited top 1 to 2 miles of the crust. Now, there's no determination on how deep actually, but I'm just going to say the top mile of the crust is going to behave strangely, and that would include roads, rail lines, conduits. Doesn't matter if it's a fiber optic cable, if it's an electrical cable, if it carries a liquid or a gas, natural gas, oil, whatever, water. Those are going to break. They're going to get pulled apart 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 feet. Okay, how long does that take to repair? Right now, way longer because the supply system's broken down. Now, the only other times you can find this in history in the last 2,000 years, 79 AD and 1486, are the only two times in the last 2,000 years that this configuration of the planets being so close, their maximum closeness that they can ever be together in a single quadrant as a tiny little square forming a second magnetic field that will loop onto our Earth. Because you got to realize it's only Mars and then Jupiter. So we're 2 planets away from the second magnetic field forming. And we're 3 planets away from the sun. Now, the second magnetic field is not going to be very strong, but it is going to be. And people are always, something that, people need to make consideration of is the discounting that this phenomenon is already getting. Oh, it's not going to have it. It's barely anything. It's not going to have. Okay, you don't get it. It's a second magnetic field in the solar system. Yeah, it's something, but it's really small. It's tiny in comparison to the sun. Well, who knows what happens when the sun steps down on a 400 or a 2,000 year cycle. And we have a second field building in the outer solar system. Now, what's interesting, being 2 planets away from that second field, intensifying day by day until 2024, October, and the sun stepping down. So if you know what toroid waves are, they're looping in on themselves. And then with us, the Earth, 2 planets away from the second field and 3 planets away from the major field, we're going to be right in the middle. They call this a Bosch wall. Now, I don't know if we'll be exactly in the Bosch wall in the center where it's an overlapping perfection of, it's almost a nullification of wave as it goes through its form there when it reaches that precise middle point. Now, we might be on either side of that, getting enclosed and interlooped by 2 magnetic fields. So you got to tell me, what's our atmosphere going to do? What's the crust going to do? These things are set in motion or locked in place by magnetic strength of our planet.